Hey, what's up guys? I wanted to film this part of the module in my garage so that I can just show you how to leverage small spaces and simple hand tools to maximize your build. And so I wanted to go over really three different things that really make my small garage. I work primarily out of just a single garage, a one-car garage that kind of bleeds over into other parts of my garage, much to my wife's demise in parking her vehicle in the garage. But for the most part, I primarily work out of a one-car garage. So with that being said, I want to focus on three different key aspects that will really maximize your garage space or your space that you can work in. That'll really make a huge difference. And one is just simple hand tools. You want to make sure that you have a mechanics socket set. If you don't, that's just going to come in handy really quickly. So I use a 3/8 ratchet set, and I have a 1/2 inch and also an 1/8 inch as well, but for the most part I'm using the 3/8 inch. I have deep sockets, I have a couple different aspects, and I bought that years ago. It was like a all-in-one mechanics tool set from actually Sears or Craftsman, which is now sold by Lowe's. So all that to say is get a decent socket and ratchet set so that you can really be not just turning wrenches, but maximize that time that you have with a good socket set. Additionally, you're going to need a set of wrenches too. So I would say at the very minimum, adjustable wrenches or crescent wrenches, but get a set of standard wrenches as well. If you can get even thin wrenches, sometimes when you're working on certain types of wheels, you'll need a very thin wrench to get into certain tight spaces. But for the most part, a set of wrenches in metric will do great, but if you have a standard set and a metric set, that's even better. Also, a set of pliers. So I primarily use channel locks and needle nose pliers probably the most, but just to have a standard set of pliers and what they call like electrician dikes, those have come in handy as well. And then of course screwdrivers. So Phillips head and flathead in varying sizes will get you into a lot of different, or get you out of a lot of different binds when it comes to if you just can't fit a larger screwdriver or you need a smaller bit. All those things will be really helpful. And then last but not least, the thing that I really feel like I can't live without sometimes is my bench vise. And I picked this bench vise up used, and I would highly recommend getting one that is that's older and used. It's going to be a harder steel. And this is an old Columbia vise that I picked up for pretty cheap compared to even new ones. I think it was just like maybe $100 or $200 or something like that. But new, this thing would be really expensive. Wait for a right deal on an older, heavier duty one if you don't have one, rather than buying the cheap ones from Harbor Freight or which you can get available at the big box stores. I had one of those before, and when I was torquing something down on it one time, I actually broke the vise. So I would say pay up a little bit for a quality vise that you can kind of use for some light fabrication, but also to just squeeze things down and hold them while you're working on them. When it comes to power tools, I use a few primarily just for light fabrication stuff. If I'm just creating a little bracket or something, I'll primarily use an angle grinder, bench grinder, and drill. And then you can't go wrong with an impact or a cordless drill as well. And I have a couple different setups for that. That just makes things easier when you're, instead of twisting the bolt on a ratchet or a wrench, you can just put a socket right on the impact gun and it just takes right off. Now I'm not talking about like a full scale, lug nut impact gun, but just an impact drill will get you out of a lot of binds if the bolt is bound up, or if you just don't feel like cranking it all the way. Additionally, I use a bench grinder, and I'll do some light fabrication or sanding, or if I just need to take off a little bit of material on something, I'll use the bench grinder, and that's come in handy pretty good as well. And I picked that up used, and it's really served me well throughout the years. And when it comes to tools, those are the ones I highly recommend: hand tools, and then a couple power tools. If you can only afford hand tools right now, that's all right. You can get the job done. It's just things make it easier the better tools you have or the more diverse tools that you have. Additionally, I want to talk about my transforming workspace. Now, some of you guys have seen some of the build videos or the time-lapse videos that I've done where I'm assembling a bike. And the way that I do that is I actually have an old engine stand that I've modified to basically hold the bike to a certain stage. And the engine stand is really helpful in kind of balancing the bike and getting it up off the ground so that I can properly work on it. Of course, I can't put the rear wheel on it while it's on the engine suspension stand, but I can do everything up until the rear wheel. And then typically I'll transform it into or onto my workbench once I get everything except for the rear wheel on, and then that'll enable me to get it up. Now, I created this workbench or this platform that you see here, and it was just a couple 2x4s, some plywood. It's something that's really simple. I can put the dimensions in the caption below, but at the end of the day, whatever will work to kind of get the build off of the floor so that you're not bending over and hurting your back while you're working on it, it'll really help. I also use just a rolling stool that helps to kind of put things in on my level when I'm sitting, so I'm not standing and crunching my back while I'm working on stuff, and that seemed to really work out well. I also created kind of a makeshift bike stand out of some gas pipe and some hooks that you can get to hang bikes with. And so I use this sometimes if I'm just doing some framework, or if I just need to just to have for light duty. It's not extremely heavy duty, especially for when you get one of the larger bikes like in category 5 on the scale. It's just not going to hold that. But for the most part, that served me well as well, just for light projects on some of the smaller builds, or if I'm just modifying the frame. It's really helpful to have it something up in eye level. And so yeah, there you have it with the modular transforming space. So I actually move stuff around as I need it because I have a small space here in the garage. And for the most part, this has served me really well. Of course, the dream is to have a larger garage and a bigger workshop. But for right now, I've primarily functioned out of a one-car garage, and even before this, at my previous house, I functioned out of an unfinished basement area. So whatever the space that you have, use it to the max. Don't let that limit you on what you can do to finish this build and to do it right with less headache. And the idea there is to use what you have. And so you don't need to go out and buy all these tools or to have a huge garage to really create something well. And I think back to even the early days of motorcycling, where oftentimes they didn't have these state-of-the-art workshops. They would just have a small backyard garage under a shade tree where they'd be working on stuff. And so in some ways, I don't really feel like I'm out of place when I'm working on these things in a small space or with limited tools. So there you have it. There's my setup, and I hope that solves the issue of really trying to leverage what you already have and in a small workspace to maximize your impact on this upcoming build that you have.